Hi everybody, this is Carissa from Iggy Fairy Designs, and I'm back on the Wow Embossing YouTube channel to share this card with you today. We're doing a bit of embossing and masking and ink blending, and I want to show you the supplies that I'm using. Of course, I'm using my Wow Embossing Powders. This is a Wow Embossing Glitter. This is the Neutral Ultra Shimmer. I'm also going to be using these two Wow Embossing Powders, Sparkling Sand and Oiled Slate. They come from the Dockside trio, which is absolutely gorgeous. And of course, I'll be doing all of my inking with the Wow Embossing Pad Clear Ultra Slow Drying Ink Pad. I forgot to show my Wow heat tool, but I will be using that as well. For the ink blending, I'm using milled lavender, Victorian velvet, iced spruce, and some blending brushes. The stamp sets that I'm using today are from the Greeting Farm, and it's Grateful for You. I'm using this beautiful floral and this stamp sentiment that I love. From Concord and Ninth, I'm using Thank You for Being You stamp set, and I'm just using the stripes in the stamp set for my card today. I pulled out some simple dies that I love to do for my card panels. So some dimensional tape and some sequins to finish off embellishing the card. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I did was I pulled out my MISTI, and I'm going to ink up the floral stamp set, and I ink it up 2 or 3 times to just get a really nice clean impression. One of the things that I love about embossing and the MISTI is that I can stamp multiple times so that I know I have a really nice juicy stamped image before I sprinkle on the powder. And I'm an over adhesiver in anyway, and I tend to make sure that I do this at least 2 or 3 times so it's nice and juicy. It's probably over excessive. You don't have to do this. Once you see the image on your paper, are good to go. So now that I am happy with that, I'm going to give that Clear Ultra Neutral Shimmer powder a little bit of a shake, and then I'm going to sprinkle it all over the image and tap it off. I tapped it off a little bit too much, so I'm just going to kind of like dip that back into the powder that was in my coffee filter, and then I'm going to tap it off a lot more gently, and now I'm pretty happy with the coverage, and I can pour that excess back into the jar, so I'm not wasting any of that beautiful powder. Now I'm going to get my heat tool. This is the Wow Dual Embossing Heat Tool. I get it nice and hot. I'm using the second setting, and I take it to the back of my paper just to warm it up, especially since this is a glitter embossing powder. And then once it's nice and warm, I can bring it around to the front and continue melting that. You'll see that it becomes very nice and shiny, and you can see that beautiful shimmer that is in that powder. So I went ahead and created a mask using some post-it notes because I couldn't find my masking paper, but I just placed that right over the embossed image, and now I'm going to emboss these stripes and stamp that, or just ink them up and stamp that right over top. I like to use like a cloth that you see I'm using here to just kind of rub the MISTI door and make sure I get it nice good impression there. And I'll do it a second time again, and I'll take my cloth and just smooth that. It slides across that glass or plastic door really nicely, and I know I'm getting a nice impression. Now I'm ready to remove the mask and add the second powder that I'm using today, which is going to be that Sparkling Sand. I really love that it's kind of this beautiful soft gold shimmer. Now I didn't shake it up, so as I looked at it I wanted to make sure to shake it. It's another glitter powder, and when you're working with the glitter powders you want to just shake that up and make sure to mix that all up so that it's nice and even with the glitter and the embossing powder. Again, I'm going to start with my heat tool on the back side of my paper, and then you can see how quickly it starts to melt because it's already started to heat up from behind and it just melts so quickly. So you can see that beautiful shimmer, and I just love it. So the reason I used the Neutral Ultra Shimmer is I wanted to do a bit of ink blending. And this acts as a resist. And so I can put my ink right over top, and I'm using just a Picket Fence ink blending tool. And I started with the milled lavender. I really wanted it to be nice and soft to go with the Dockside Trio powders that I chose for the stripes. I didn't want it to be too stark or contrasting, so I kept my colors really, really soft. I concentrated the darker colors towards the center of the flowers and then just softened it up around the edges. There are some leaves in this flowers. I just did the leaves that are towards the bottom left, just to give it some interest. And then I totally mess up here and I put my purple blending tool into the green, but thank goodness for the Distress Oxides, because I can just go right over top of that and blend it out. And it actually created a really nice darker purple, which ended up inspiring me to darken up the center of those flowers with another color that you'll see in a bit. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment here off to the side, kind of like the upper right hand side, to create a little bit of a triangle with the stripes going down the side, then the florals in the bottom left, and then the sentiment in the upper right. And I am just going to ink that up 2 times and stamp that down with the MISTI. And once that is good to go, I can see, oh, I'm going to do it a 3rd time. Like I said, I'm an over adhesiver, over stamper. I just like to have that really nice, crisp image before I sprinkle my powder on top. And now I'm going to use the oiled slate, which is actually one of my favorite powders. It has these mixture of colors, almost like a dark blue and black and silver in it, and it embosses sentiments great. So again, I'm going to start from the back and then bring my tool to the front, and it just helps to melt it super, super quick and nice and evenly, so you can see how beautiful that is. So that's when I decided that I needed to deepen up the center of those flowers just a tad. They were kind of getting lost. The milled lavender was just a bit too soft, and so by deepening up the centers and then softening up the edges with this Victorian velvet, it just really kind of made those white resist pop even more. And you can see I'm just using a cloth to kind of buff that out and remove any of the ink that is sitting on top of the embossing powder. And because it is acting as a resist, it just removes right off, but it stays on the paper. I die cut my panel with this kind of scallop stitched edge die and added it to a navy cardstock and thought I was done, but then I felt like I needed to add just a bit more oomph, and so that's where the sequins come in. I think they're the perfect embellishment when you want to add something but you don't want to go overboard. And I love these clear sequins. They just add the perfect touch. So I'm using some Zot's mini adhesive dots, and I place those on the back of the sequins and then place them on just sort of randomly around. I like to do uneven kind of groupings, so I'll either use like 3 or 5 or 7 sequins and then just scatter them around, cluster them kind of around the focal parts of my card, which is the floral and the sentiment, and then that finishes up the card for today. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you'll see more videos like this one. I loved doing the masking with embossing. I think it just adds such a great touch to your card. And then that ink blending over the clear embossing powder with that resist look. It's just such a soft, elegant card. And I loved creating it for you today. Of course, be sure to tag Wow Embossing when you're sharing your projects on social media. We love to come by and see them. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.